Hey guys, Jay here with Tap and Turn Gaming again. Welcome back to our channel for another one of our Ravnica Guild Battle deck techs. Today's guild is going to be the Golgari, and they are going to be led by Gerard, Golgari Lichlord. So basically what the Golgari are all about is death and decay. They like to reuse and repurpose their dead minions and allies to basically make themselves stronger. Death is just another outlook on life in the Golgari's eyes. So one of the keywords for Golgari is Scavenge from the Return to Ravnica block. Me personally, I think Scavenge is kind of a garbage ability, at least from a commander standpoint. I personally never want to exile my own stuff from my own graveyard. So you won't see that many Scavenge cards in this deck. But I do kind of take the overall theme of the Golgari. They like to call themselves the Swarm. So I do kind of run with that theme a little bit, but put my own twist on it. So you won't see me exiling creatures from my own graveyard to make my creatures stronger, but you'll see my creatures getting stronger through +1/+1 counters from abilities from other creatures. So my creatures still do help out each other. By making, each other stronger, just not from exiling them from my graveyard with the scavenge mechanic. So it still does work very well with Gerard himself. I mean, one of his abilities is he allows you to sacrifice a creature and each opponent loses life equal to that creature's power. So the deck really does revolve a lot around Gerard's ability, where you're making your creatures bigger through +1/+1 counters from the abilities and or moving them from other creatures onto different ones, and then using those creatures and sacrificing them away to Gerard so he can do mean, nasty things to your opponents. So yeah, I mean, basically that's what the Golgari deck is all about. There are a few dredge cards in here as well from the original Ravnica set. That was the Golgari keyword from that set. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's a pretty cool deck. I think it works very, very well around the commander that I chose for the deck, Gerard. So I hope you guys enjoy the video and stay tuned for the deck tech. Hey guys, welcome to the part of the video where we will go into the deck tech for the Golgari Guild. So obviously, as you can see here in front of you, I have the Golgari Guild symbol, and behind that I have the stipulation cards for the Golgari Guild. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. So the first card here is the creature that I chose to be the commander of this deck, which is Gerard Golgari Lichlord. He's a 4-cost 2/2 legendary zombie elf. He gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard. So he can potentially get pretty big. But his most potent ability on him is you can pay 1, a black and a green, and sacrifice another creature. Each opponent loses life equal to the sacrificed creature's power. So like I said in the intro, this deck is all about, all your creatures, making each other stronger through +1/+1 counters, and then using those powerful creatures as sacrifice fodder to Gerard to put the serious hurt on your opponents. So, I mean, he also does have sacrifice a swamp in a forest and return him from your graveyard to your hand. You probably won't see me really ever do that often unless I desperately need him back to my hand. But, I'm not a huge fan of sacrificing lands. I mean, I did consider putting in Life from the Loam in this deck just for that, but, the main thing on him is his sacrifice a creature ability. And he's a pretty relatively cheap general at 4, so, it's really not a big deal if he gets killed and then I have to recast him for 6. Generally, when I do cast him, I'm probably going to end the game the turn that I cast him. So, getting him back to my hand from my graveyard isn't really something I need to worry about too much. But That's Jarad, the commander of the deck, the creature that I chose to do so. Next up, we'll take a look at the rest of the stipulation cards, and first up are the rest of the legendary creatures. And the first one is Varolz, the Scar-Striped. He's a 3-cost 2/2 that makes it so that each creature card in your graveyard has Scavenge. The Scavenge cost is equal to its mana cost. Now, I did say in the intro as well that you won't see that many Scavenge cards in the deck. This is the only one. It does make every creature in my graveyard have Scavenge, so if it gets to the point in the game where I know that I'm probably not going to be able to get a creature back from my graveyard, I can go ahead and Scavenge it from my graveyard and exile it. You generally won't ever see me do that too often because I will probably always have a way to get a creature back from my graveyard, either straight into play or back to my hand so I can recast it and use it again. But, he is one of the stipulation cards, so, he does, enable me to scavenge if I want, but he also does have sacrifice another creature to regenerate him. So he kind of also fits the theme that way of death and decay, using your other creatures as fodder to make him stronger. So, that's Varolz. I like him. He's pretty cool. Next up we have Savra, Queen of the Golgari. She's the original Guildmaster of the Golgari and the sister to Jarad. She's a 4-cost 2/2. Whenever you sacrifice a black creature, you may pay 2 life. If you do, each other player sacrifices a creature. So she's kind of like an activated Grave Pact, which is pretty cool. You have to pay 2 life, and whenever you sack a black creature, pay 2 life and basically get a Grave Pact trigger. And she also has, whenever you sacrifice a green creature, you may gain 2 life. So if you sacrifice a creature that's both green and black, you can trigger both of those and essentially just trigger a Grave Pact without losing life. Well, you're going to lose 2 life, then gain 2 life if the sacrifice creature is both green and black. So I like her. She's pretty cool. I do have some, a decent amount of free sacrifice outlets in this deck, so, she's pretty cool. I like her. And lastly, for the legends, we have Sisters of Stone Death. It's an 8-cost 7/5 legendary Gorgon, where it's got 3 pretty cool abilities. The first one is you can pay a green, target creature block Sisters of Stone Death this turn if able. So basically like a lure on a creature. You can force a creature to block this one. Then it has pay a black and a green, remove from the game target creature blocking or blocked by Sisters of Stone Death. And then also has at the bottom pay 2 and a black, put a creature card removed from the game with Sisters of Stone Death into play under your control. So this is a pretty cool creature. It does cost a lot of mana at 8, but essentially you can force creatures to block it, then you can exile creatures that are blocking it or that are blocked by this creature. And then you can pay 3 and basically take a creature out of exile that you exiled with this card and put it into play under your control. So it's got some really interesting abilities on it. I really do like this card. When this set very first came out, I was a Golgari player, and I wanted this card very, very badly back in the day when, the original Ravnica set came out. So I do kind of have a place in my heart for this card. I really do like it a lot. Okay, so those are the legends. Next up, we'll take a look at the Guildmages. First up is Korozda Guildmage, a 2-cost 2/2, where you can pay 1 a black and a green. Target creature gets +1/+1 and gains Intimidate until end of turn, which is pretty cool. Give one of your creatures evasion to potentially get through for some damage. Or you can pay 2 a black and a green, sacrifice a non-token creature, and put X 1/1 green sapling creature tokens into play, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. So I do have a lot of ways to distribute counters among creatures, either from other creatures themselves or through, abilities, things like that. So, you know, if I'm going to lose a creature maybe to like an opponent's kill spell or something like that, or if I just want to generate a bunch of little blockers, you know, I can sacrifice a big mean creature and get X 1/1 saplings, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. So I do like this card a lot. Then we have the Golgari Guildmage, 2-cost 2/2, where you can pay 4 and a black and sacrifice a creature to return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, which isn't a bad ability. It's kind of heftily costed at 5, but it's not a bad ability. And then you can also pay 4 and a green and put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So he's okay. He's decent. Next up are the mana rocks that are some of the stipulation cards. And here's the Golgari Key Rune, you know, 3 cost, tap it for a black or a green, or you can animate it into a 2/2 black and green insect with death touch for a black and a green. Then we have the Golgari Signet, you know, cost 2, pay 1 and tap it, get black and green your mana pool. And the Clue Stone, cost 3, tap it for a black or a green, pay a black and a green and tap it and sacrifice it to draw a card if you so choose to. Okay, next up are the stipulation lands. First up is Golgari Rot Farm, you know, the bounce land. Then we have the Shock Land, Overgrown Tomb, and the Guild Gate, Golgari Guild Gate. And then we have the Charm, the last stipulation card, the Golgari Charm, 2-cost instant. Choose 1, all creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn, or destroy target enchantment, or regenerate each creature you control. So it's got some pretty solid modes on it. I think all 3 of them are pretty good, actually. You know, if you're playing against an opponent that's playing like a token deck, you know, that first mode will wipe out all their 1/1s. Or you can blow up an enchantment, which is always not bad, or you can regenerate each creature you control. So if someone goes to, you know, Day of Judgment, or, you know, Blasphemous Act, Chain Reaction, any kind of sweeper that specifically doesn't say your creatures can't be regenerated, you know, you can use this in response to that and save all your guys. Okay, so those are the stipulation cards of the deck. Next up, for the rest of the deck, we're going to take a look at the remainder of my land base. Pretty basic. As far as basic lands, I run 12 basic swamps. So you got 12 basic swamps, 13 basic forests, and the rest of the lands are, you know, non-basics. I have a couple of dual lands. We have Woodland Cemetery. It's the check land. Taps for a black or a green, and it comes into play tapped unless you control a swamp or a forest. We got Llanowar Waste, the Pain land. Tap it for 1, or tap it for a black or a green, and it deals 1 damage to you. And we got Verdant Catacombs. It's the fetch land. You can tap it, pay a life, and search your deck for a swamp or a forest and put it into play. We got some of my tech lands, as I like to call them. First up is Shizo, Death Storehouse. It taps for a black, or you can pay a black and tap it to give target legendary creature fear. So that's pretty cool. You know, give one of your creatures some evasion to get through. And we got Grim Backwoods. Taps for 1, or you can pay 2, a black and a green, and tap it and sacrifice a creature to draw a card. So card advantage is always welcome. We got Crypt of Agadeem, comes into play tapped. It taps for black, or you can pay 2 and tap it and get black to your mana pool for each black creature card in your graveyard. So that's pretty solid. Then we have Svogthos, the Restless Tomb. It's basically, you know, one of the lands from the original Ravnica set that's, you know, specific to Golgari, so I felt like I just kind of had to put it in the deck. It taps for 1, or you can pay 3, a black and a green, and it animates into a black and green plant zombie creature with this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. It's still a land. So, you know, pretty cool land, I think. Next up is Bojuka Bog. You know, black staple land, comes into play tapped. When it comes in, you exile someone's entire graveyard and you can tap it for black. Then we have Mirren the Moaning Well. Tap it for 1, or you can pay 3 and tap it and sacrifice a creature to gain life equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness. Pretty good land in this deck, seeing as I can make my creatures pretty monstrous through +1/+1 counters. And then lastly, for the lands, we have Mosswort Bridge. It's the green hideaway land. When it comes in, you exile the top 4 cards of your library. You look at the top 4 cards of your library, and you can exile 1. And basically that 1 exiled card becomes hidden away underneath this land. And then once you meet this stipulation of creatures you control have total power 10 or greater, you can pay a green and tap this to cast the exiled card for free. So it's a pretty easy stipulation to meet with this deck. Okay, so that's the remainder of my land base. Next up, we'll take a look at the rest of the cards that I play in the deck, and I have them broken into categories. So first up, we'll take a look at the enchantments that I play. First is Attrition. 3-cost black enchantment. You can pay a black and sacrifice a creature to destroy target non-black creature. So I do have ways to generate tokens in this deck, which is, you know, the best value out of this enchantment is sacrificing tokens. But, you know, if you have other creatures that you don't mind sacrificing, you know, you can toss them into this to blow up some of your opponent's creatures. Here we have a new addition to the deck, Retribution of the Ancients, 1-cost black enchantment where you can pay 1 black and remove X +1/+1 counters from among creatures you control to give target creature -X until end of turn. This is a very, very good card for this deck. I do have lots of ways to distribute counters among creatures. So being able to pay a black and remove counters from among creatures I control doesn't have to necessarily be one creature. I could remove 2 counters from one creature, 1 counter from another one, and 5 counters from another one. You know, so this gets around creatures with indestructibility, mainly, you know, the ones that everybody knows about, you know, like Avacyn, or, you know, Darksteel Colossus, or, you know, Ulamog the Infinite Gyre. You know, this will allow you to get around that indestructibility and kill the creature. So, you know, plus it's a very cheap enchantment and it's cheap to activate, so it's a very good card in this deck. Next up is Perilous Forays, 5-cost green enchantment. You can pay 1 and sacrifice a creature to fetch a basic land out of your deck and put it in a play tapped. So, pretty cool card. I mean, I like sack outlets. Sack outlets that get me land are pretty damn good in my eyes. Here we have Necrogenesis, 2-cost enchantment where you can pay 2 and exile a creature card in a graveyard from, exile a creature card from a graveyard to get a man, I can't talk today. To put a 1/1 green sapling creature token into play. So, you know, pretty cool. Graveyard hate. Mainly, I'm never going to exile stuff from my graveyard, just my opponent's graveyards. But, you know, being able to exile creatures from their graveyard so they can never use them again is good. Getting a creature out of it is even better. Here's Golgari Germination, 3-cost enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you get a 1/1 green sapling. So, you know, all your creatures that you sacrifice or get killed or whatever get replaced by a 1/1 sapling. Here's Deathbridge Chant, 6-cost enchantment where you can, when it enters the battlefield, put the top 10 cards of your library into your graveyard. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose a card at random in your graveyard. If it's a creature card, put it into the battlefield. Otherwise, put it in your hand. I love this card. I mean, yeah, it mills you for 10, but on your upkeep, you know, you get to just pick a card at random from your graveyard. If it's a creature, it goes straight into play. If it's not a creature, it goes in your hand so you can still use it again. You know, whether it be a land, an artifact, an enchantment, a spell, you know, it's just really, really good card recursion. Here's Malevolent Awakening, 3-cost black enchantment. You can pay 1 and 2 black and sack a dude to return a dude from your graveyard to your hand. So I really think I play this in a lot of my black decks. I think it's a very underrated card. Not only is it a sacrifice outlet, but a sacrifice outlet that allows you to get creatures back from your graveyard. So I really like this card a lot. And lastly, Grave Pact. Everybody knows what Grave Pact does. Everybody knows that this is also the shittiest art for Grave Pact known to man. But, you know, basically whenever I lose a guy, each opponent loses a guy when this is on the board. Okay, so those are my enchantments of the deck. Next up, we'll take a look at my artifacts. Not that many, there's only 4. And first up is Executioner's Capsule. 1-cost black artifact, or you can pay 2 and tap it and sacrifice it to destroy target non-black creature. So basically, you can pay 1 and a black and tap it to Doomblade. And this card is particularly good with one of the creatures that I have in this deck, but I'll get to that interaction when I get to the creature. Here we have Ashnod's Altar, 3-cost artifact, where you can sacrifice a creature to get 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. So another free sack outlet that gets you mana is really nice. Here we have Birthing Pod, a 4-cost green artifact with the Phyrexian mana of green, so you can pay that by either 1 green or 2 life. And this allows you to pay 1 and a Phyrexian green and tap it, sacrifice a creature, search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library, and you can only activate this anytime you could cast a sorcery. So essentially, if you activate this and sacrifice a 3-cost guy, you can search your deck for a 4-cost guy and put him right into play. So this allows you to chain your creatures pretty well. You know, if you dropped like a 3-cost guy and you got all the use out of them, you can't really do much with them anymore. You know, toss them into this and turn them into a 4-cost guy that will do something else cool for you. So it's a really powerful artifact. And lastly, we have Contagion Engine, 6-cost artifact. When it enters the battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature target player controls. So, you know, that's pretty good on its own, but then it has where you can pay 4 and tap it to proliferate, then proliferate again. Basically, what proliferate is you choose any number of permanents and or players with counters on them, then give each another counter of a kind already there, then do it again. So, you know, that is, you know, if my opponent has poison counters, this is, you know, one of the cards from the Scars of Mirrodin block, and that was, you know, a big part of that was poison counters making their return. So, you know, you can give your opponents more poison counters, you can give your creatures more +1/+1 or -1/-1 counters. Mainly that's why I have this in here. It will let me distribute -1/-1s to each creature, you know, someone controls. Never going to be me, it's probably going to be an opponent, but it does let me put more +1/+1s on my creatures. It would let me put more loyalty counters on planeswalkers. Any type of counter, it lets me put more of them on it. And this card lets me do it twice. So it's a pretty good card for this deck. Okay, those are my artifacts. Next up, we'll take a look at my spells, which I believe are all sorceries. I think the only instant that I have in the deck was the Golgari Charm. So we'll take a look at those now. First up is Vigor Mortis. It's a 4-cost black sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. If green was spent to cast Vigor Mortis, that creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. I just felt like this had to be in the deck. You know, being able to res a guy from your graveyard is always good. Being able to res him stronger is even better, and that's kind of the main focus on the deck is distributing counters among my creatures to make them stronger to sacrifice to my commander. So I like this card a lot. Next up is Gerard's Orders. It's a 4-cost sorcery where you can search your library for up to 2 creature cards and reveal them. Put one into your hand and the other into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. So you don't have to search for 2 creatures. You can search for 1, and then you can just choose to either put that one in your hand or in your graveyard. Or if you do search for 2 of them, 1 goes in your hand and 1 goes in your graveyard. So you can essentially use this as just a tutor spell for a creature and just put it right in your hand. But mainly I'll probably always fetch up a creature to my hand and one to my graveyard that I know I can maybe reanimate with a Vigor Mortis or something else. So I like it. It's a pretty good card. Plus it's the orders of your commander. He's giving you orders. He's pointing his stick at you and giving you orders. So I just felt like it had to be in the deck. Here's Gaze of Granite. It costs 2 black and a green and X. Destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X or less. So I like this card because it'll blow up artifacts and enchantments and planeswalkers as well. So if I just need to wipe the board of everything, if I dump enough mana into the X cost, I can more than likely do so. Here's Increasing Savagery, 4-cost green sorcery. Put 5 +1/+1 counters on target creature. If Increasing Savagery was cast from a graveyard, put 10 +1/+1 counters on that creature instead. So, like I said, this deck's all about making your creatures stronger through counters. So, a 4-cost sorcery that lets me put 5 counters on something is pretty damn good, and then I can flash it back for 7 and then put 10 counters on something. So, pretty good card for the deck. Here we have my sweepers. Plaguewind, 9-cost black sorcery. Destroy all creatures you don't control. They can't be regenerated. I love this card. I play this in just about every black deck. Well, actually, I used to play it in just about every black deck. I've replaced a lot of these with In Garruk's Wake because it also blows up all planeswalkers you don't control. But I just don't have enough In Garruk's Wake, so I still have a Plaguewind in this one. I'm actually just going to take these and just find the other sweeper that I have in the deck before we continue. Probably should have had these sorted before I put the cards up on camera, but nonetheless, here's my other sweeper here, Black Sun Zenith. Cost 2 black and X. Put X -1/-1 counters on each creature, then shuffle this into your deck. Another thing that gets around indestructible creatures, like an Avacyn or, Darksteel Colossus, whatever. So it's a very, very solid sweeper. And then one you can potentially draw into again and use again if you need to. Next up are my tutors. Here's Increasing Ambition, cost 5, lets you fetch up a card from your deck and put it in your hand, and then if you flash it back for 8, you get to tutor up 2 cards and put them in your hand, so pretty cool. Demonic Collusion, cost 5, lets you, tutor for a card, put it in your hand, but it also has buyback for discarding 2 cards. So if you cast this for 5 and discard 2 cards from your hand, you can cast this, and then instead of it going to your graveyard, it goes in your hand. So a reusable tutor is always cool. And then Diabolic Tutor, it is what it is. Cost 4, lets you tutor up a card and put it in your hand. Okay, then we have the rest of my spells. Kadama's Reach. Everybody knows what Kadama's Reach does. Lets you fetch up 2 basics. Lets you put 1 onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand. Little mana ramp, never hurt nobody. And then lastly, Beacon of Unrest, 5-cost black sorcery. Put target artifact or creature card in a graveyard and deploy under your control, and then shuffle Beacon of Unrest into its owner's library. So reusable resurrection for artifacts or creatures from any graveyard is pretty sweet. Okay, so those are my spells of the deck. Now we're going to take a look at the creature base of the deck. First up, we have Sylvok Replica, 3-cost artifact creature. You can pay 1 green and sacrifice him to destroy target artifact or enchantment, and he's a 1/3. So, you know, he's pretty cool. He works very well with one of the other creatures in the deck, but I will get to that interaction when I get to the creature. It's actually the same creature that works very well with Executioner's Capsule. So for those of you watching, try to think what creature I'm talking about. Here we have Phyrexian Plague Lord, 5-cost black creature. He's a 4/4. You can tap him and sacrifice him to give a creature a -4/-4, or you can sacrifice a creature to give a creature a -1/-1 until end of turn. So he can sack himself to give something a -4/-4, or he's also a free sacrifice outlet for other creatures to give creatures -1/-1. So I really like him. He's really cool. I like him a lot. Here's Eternal Witness, green staple, 3-cost 2/1. When it comes in, take any card in your graveyard back to your hand. Here's Lotleth Troll, 2-cost 2/1 with trample. Discard a creature card and put a +1/+1 counter on him, and then you can regenerate him for 1 black. So he's very, very solid. If you start dumping a lot of creatures in your graveyard by discarding them to him and he gets bigger, you know, he's a giant trampling creature that can regenerate for 1 black. So he's no joke. Here's Spike Feeder, a 3-cost creature that comes into play with 2 +1/+1 counters, so essentially a 3-cost 2/2. This is one of the creatures that I have in the deck that allows me to, you know, move and distribute counters among my other creatures. So he has pay 2 and remove a +1/+1 counter from him to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, or I can remove a +1/+1 counter from him to gain 2 life. So pretty cool. Next up we have Fungal Behemoth, a 4-cost creature whose power and toughness are each equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on creatures you control. And then he also has Suspend X for 2 green and X cannot be 0. Basically what Suspend is if you dump, let's say, 4 into the X cost on the Suspend, he'll be exiled with 4 time counters on him, and then on every upkeep, every one of your upkeeps, I should say, one of the time counters gets removed, and then when the last is removed, you cast this without paying its cost, and it gains haste. So the other part of him is whenever a time counter is removed from him while he's exiled, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So, you know, if I dump a lot of mana into the X cost on this, I can start shooting out counters on my other creatures on my upkeep, so he's pretty cool. Here's Nezumi Graverobber, a 2-cost 2/1 where I can pay 2 and exile a card from an opponent's graveyard. Then if I activate that and it targets an empty graveyard, he flips into Night Eyes the Desecrator, where I can pay 4 and a black and res any creature from any graveyard onto the field under my control. So he's pretty solid. Here's Fertilid, a 3-cost creature that comes in with 2 +1/+1 counters, so essentially a 3-cost 2/2, where I can pay 1 and a green and remove a +1/+1 counter from him. Target player searches his or her library for a basic land card, puts it into play tapped, then they shuffle their deck. So he's like, if I, you know, distribute counters on him or move counters from, you know, some of my spike creatures onto him, or if I do like increasing savagery and, you know, just put more counters on him, he's basically reusable mana ramp. So he's pretty damn good. Here's Skullbriar the Walking Grave, 2-cost 1/1 with haste. When he hits a player, you put a +1/+1 counter on him, and then what's really cool about him is that counters remain on him as he moves to any zone other than a player's hand or library. So if he goes to the graveyard, he keeps his +1/+1 counters. If he gets exiled, he keeps his +1/+1 counters. So, you know, he's really cool. If you kill him, he just stays as strong as he was with the counters on him, and then if he somehow gets resurrected, he comes back with all those counters. So he's pretty cool. Here we have Rakshasa Deathdealer, 2-cost 2/2. where you can pay a black and a green to give him a +2/+2, or you can pay a black and a green to regenerate him. He's a really solid beater. You know, a 2-cost 2/2 that can pump +2/+2 for 2, and then you can regenerate him for 2 as well. He's really good. I like him. Here's Deathrite Shaman, 1-cost 1/2 with 3 abilities. First one is you can tap him to exile target land from a graveyard to get 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, so pretty cool. Or you can pay a black and tap him, exile target instant or sorcery card from a graveyard. Each opponent loses 2 life. Or you can pay a green and tap him, exile target creature card from a graveyard, and you gain 2 life. So just lots of options that this guy gives you. I know at one point this guy was worth, you know, worth quite a bit. I don't know if he still is, but he's pretty solid. I like him. Here's Triskelion, a 6-cost 1/1 that comes in to play with 3 +1/+1 counters, and you can remove a +1/+1 counter on him to make him ping target creature or player. So, you know, he's pretty solid. You know, if I want to just, you know, chain gun at an opponent, I can remove counters to, you know, kill creatures. You know, if I somehow move counters onto him from other creatures with some of the spike creatures that I have in here, you know, I can just keep generating counters on him and making him do more damage. So he fits very well into the deck and into the theme of the deck. Here's one of the dredge cards from the original Ravnica set, Grave-Shell Scarab, a 5-cost 4/4, where you can pay 1 and sacrifice him to draw a card, so that's pretty good. And he has Dredge for 1. So basically what Dredge is if you would draw a card, instead you may put exactly 1 card. In this instance, it's 1 card because it's Dredge 1. So put exactly 1 card from the top of your library into your graveyard. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand, otherwise draw a card. So Dredge is a very popular mechanic for decks that like to abuse the graveyard and get stuff in their graveyard, mainly like Reanimator style decks. But, you know, he's really good. He's a 5-cost 4/4 that you can pay 1 and draw a card, and you can dredge him for 1. So, you know, he's essentially a reusable card draw. And then if you have Savra on the board, if you sacrifice him, he's black and green. So not only will you get to draw a card off of sacrificing him, but you'll also get to basically get a Grave Pack trigger off of Savra. So I like him. He's really cool. And he fits very well into the theme of the deck. Next up we have Lord of Extinction, a 5-cost elemental creature whose power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in all graveyards. This guy, he gets huge when you drop him, especially if it's late game. You know, it counts for all cards in all graveyards, so you could imagine how big he can get sometimes. Here we have Corpsejack Menace, 4-cost 4/4. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be placed on a creature you control, twice that many are put on that creature instead. He's bananas in this deck. So, you know, like I said in the intro, and like you've seen from some of the creatures that I have in the deck, you know, there's a lot of focus on putting counters on dudes, you know, so being able to double the amount of counters that get put on my creatures is even better. He's essentially kind of like half of doubling season on a creature. And here is the creature that works very, very well with the previously mentioned Executioner's Capsule and Sylvok Replica, Glissa the Traitor. She's a 3-cost 3/3 with First Strike and Death Touch, so that alone is amazing. Any creature that goes to combat with her just insta-dies. Doesn't even get the chance to touch her, because she First Strikes and Death Touches. So any creature she touches just dies automatically and doesn't even get to touch her. But another cool thing about her is whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Well, guess what? Executioner's Capsule is an artifact. And you know what Executioner's Capsule does? You can pay 2 and tap it to blow up a non-black creature. So when you activate that, and sacrifice the capsule, this triggers her ability. Granted that it's a non-black creature, so every time you sacrifice Executioner's capsule while she's on the board, you get it right back to your hand so you can recast it and reuse it. You can do the same thing with Sylvok Replica, you know, to blow up artifacts and enchantments. So Glissa the Traitor is amazing. Here we have Woodfall Primus, an 8 cost 6/6 with Trample. When he comes into play, destroy target non-creature permanent. So, you know, that is what it is. You know, being able to blow up artifacts, enchantments, lands, planeswalkers is just really, really good. But he has Persist. And what Persist is when this creature is put into a graveyard from play, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, return it to play under its owner's control with a -1/-1 counter on it. So what's really cool about this creature, as far as I know, so what I've been told, is that if I cast him and he comes in, he blows up, you know, a non-land permanent, and then if he dies and comes back with a -1/-1 counter, if I somehow put a +1/+1 counter on him, that and the -1/-1 counter cancel each other out. So if he dies again, he persists again. So correct me if I'm wrong on that. Leave a comment in the comment section below the video whether or not that is correct or incorrect, but I've been told that it's correct. So this guy, if that is correct, can be, you know, like chain gun non-land permanent destruction. So I mean, even if that's not true, he's still really good anyway. There's another one of the Spike cards, Spike Breeder, a 4-cost creature that comes in with 3 +1/+1 counters, so a 4-cost 3/3. You can pay 2 and remove a counter from him to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. That, you know, all the Spike creatures do that. Or you can pay 2 and remove a counter from him to get a 1/1 Spike creature token, a green Spike creature token. So, you know, you can move counters from him onto other creatures, or you can remove counters from him to get 1/1 creatures. So, pretty solid. Here's Vulturous Zombie. 5-cost 3/3 flyer. When a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, put a +1/+1 counter on Vulturous Zombie. So if I kill one of my opponent's creatures, he gets a counter. If they cast a spell and it goes to the graveyard, he gets a counter. If an opponent gets milled, he gets counters. If, you know, it's from anywhere. If a card's put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, he just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And he's very menacing. He can get very, very big very, very quickly. Next up we have Golgari Thug, a 2-cost 1/1. When he dies, put target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library, and he has Dredge 4. So, you know, I can sacrifice him to, let's say, an Ashnod's Altar or Phyrexian Plague Lord, or, you know, something else that allows me to sacrifice creatures. So, I mean, he's a measly 1/1 for 2 mana. But when he dies, I get to basically Volrash Stronghold. I get to, you know, take a creature from my graveyard and put it on top of my deck. So, you know, I can sacrifice him like at the end of my opponent's turn to get a creature back and put it on top of my deck and then draw it for my turn and then recast it. So he's pretty cool. He also has Dredge 4. So, you know, if I would draw, I can instead mill 4 and then get him back to my hand. So he's pretty solid. Here's Sakura-Tribe Elder. Everybody knows what he does. 2-cost 1/1, sack him, search your deck for a basic land, and put it into play tapped. Here's Spike Weaver, 4-cost creature that comes in with 3 +1/+1 counters, so a 4-cost 3/3. You know, he's got the usual ability, pay 2, remove a counter from him to put that counter on another creature. Or you can pay 1 and remove a counter from him, and creatures deal no combat damage this turn. So, you know, you can move counters from him onto other creatures, or you can pay 1 and remove counters from him to fog, basically. So he's pretty solid. Here's Acidic Slime, green staple, 5-cost 2/2 with Death Touch that blows up an artifact, enchantment, or land when it enters the battlefield. So just, you know, if you're playing green, play Acidic Slime. Here's Sepulchral Primordial, 7 cost 5/4 with Intimidate. When he enters the battlefield, for each opponent, you may put up to 1 target creature card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So, I mean, he's just good fun. You know, especially in a multiplayer commander game. You know, if you have 3 opponents, you drop him, you get to res a creature from all 3 of their graveyards into play under your control. And I believe Derek mentioned this before, but, you know, if you cast him and then your opponent has one of these in their graveyard, you know, you cast him, you get 3 creatures. If one of them is a Sepulchral Primordial, you get that, and then you get to res 3 more creatures. So he's just awesome. I love this card. Here's Hornet Queen, a 7 cost 2/2 with flying and death touch. So, I mean, that's pretty good on its own. But when it comes into play, you get 4 1/1 green flying insect creature tokens with death touch. So, this card is so good. Yeah, it costs 7 and it's only a 2/2, but it brings 4 1/1 flyers with death touch. You know, and a lot of people probably will think twice about attacking into you when you have 4 little measly 1/1s that can kill their 20/20 if it touches them. So, you know, Hornet Queen is very good. Here's Avatar of Woe, an 8 cost 6/5 that costs 6 less to cast if there are 10 or more creature cards in all graveyards. So, you know, that can easily only cost you 2 black mana to cast. And it has Fear, so, you know, it's got some evasion to hit a player. And you can tap it to destroy target creature and it can't be regenerated. No color restrictions, no nothing. Just blow up any creature and it can't be regenerated. So, really good card. Here's Spike Rogue, a 3 cost creature, comes in with 2 +1/+1 counters, so a 3 cost 2/2. The usual ability again, pay 2, remove a +1/+1 counter from it to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, or you can pay 2 and remove a +1/+1 counter from any creature you control to put a +1/+1 counter on Spike Rogue. So, you know, he lets you move counters from him onto other creatures, or he lets you take counters from other creatures and put them back on him. So, you know, just more +1/+1 counter manipulation. Then we have Golgari Grave-Troll, a 5 cost 0/0. His power, but he comes in with +1/+1 counters on it for each creature card in your graveyard. And then you can pay 1 and remove a +1/+1 counter from him to regenerate him, and he has Dredge 6, so he's pretty solid. And the last creature in the deck is Necropolis Regent, a 6 cost 6/5 flyer that allows you to put... whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. This card's ridiculous in this deck. You know, a 6/5 flyer for 6 is pretty damn good on its own. One that, you know, puts counters on your creatures whenever they deal combat damage for each point of damage that they dealt is pretty ridiculous. So this just fits so well into the theme of the deck. It's crazy. Alright, and that is it for the Golgari deck tech. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, throw it a like or a comment or a subscribe, or all 3. We really do appreciate it. Once Derek and I have finished all of the deck techs for the Ravnica Guilds, we will begin the EDH gameplays of guilds battling against each other with our football-style bracket to see which guild is the ultimate champion of Ravnica. Who's the head dog, the big boss. So, again, this has been Jay with Tap and Turn Gaming. I hope you enjoyed my Golgari deck tech with Jarad Golgari Lichlord as the commander. And stay tuned to our channel for more of the deck techs, and then we will start the guild battles after that. Thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll catch you later.